Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. Story 1. The Smoky Mountain Shadow. A mist-shrouded rain had slicked Route 321 into Gatlinburg when college junior Maya Parker and her boyfriend Liam nudged their rented Jeep up the gravel switchbacks to a cedar-walled A-frame perched above Cades Cove. They came chasing fall foliage, cheap craft beer tastings, and the Instagram brag of cabin number 13 panoramic view. The host's only house rule was penciled on the welcome chalkboard: sign the guest book before dawn. At 11:47 p.m., Maya, buzzing from pumpkin spice cider, obliged, inking their names beside a neat column of strangers who'd checked out weeks earlier. The cabin smelled of damp pine and old perfume, yet the couple dozed to the lull of crickets until a soft knock, 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 3 deliberate taps shook the balcony door. Liam blamed raccoons, Maya blamed the wind, until the porch motion light died mid-glow and her phone timestamp blinked 3:13 a.m. Behind the glass, they saw only their own reflections, until a taller silhouette grew between them, blacker than the night, its shape rippling like heat haze. Frozen, they remembered the local legend told at the brewery tour: a Civil War deserter nicknamed Shadow John was hanged nearby, said to appear when flash photography mocked his unmarked grave. Maya, a shutterbug, had spent sunset popping bursts of flash over the valley. Now her Nikon stank of burned circuitry and the battery read 0%. The silhouette glided closer, revealing a charred hemp noose fused to its neck. Cabinets slammed in cascading rhythm, every dish rattling like teeth. In a blind scramble, they fled to the Jeep headlights, sputtering as if the battery were strangled too. When the engine finally turned, Maya glanced back. The balcony door gaped open, though the lock was intact, and pages of the guest book flipped in a wind that wasn't there. They drove until sunrise bled over Knoxville, dumping the cabin key at a 24-hour Dropbox. Safe in daylight, Maya dared to check her camera's memory card. Every shot of yesterday's vistas had been overwritten with the same blurry frame, a rope's frayed loop hovering above her sleeping face. Outcome: they survived, but sleepless nights followed Maya, jolting awake at exactly 3:13, smelling pine and stale perfume. The twist landed a week later when Airbnb pinged her inbox: thanks for hosting MP, a review allegedly posted by her own account at cabin number 13, ending with the line, "The guest book added another name overnight." Story 2. The Adirondack handprint veteran travel nurse Corey McAllister booked a solo decompression week at Pineglass Lodge, a 1910 log cabin off Route 86 near Saranac Lake. Its Airbnb listing bragging about stained glass windows rescued from the long-demolished Lake Placid Opera House. Mac's motive was simple: he'll burn out, hike high peaks, and mark his 34th birthday off-grid. The host messaged one odd rule: wipe the dining room table every night. Do not leave prints. On his first dusk, September's maples were already bleeding crimson across Mirror Lake, and the cabin's lacquered table reflected the flicker of a single beeswax candle like a still pond. Inciting incident: while unpacking, Mac found an antique tin of lemon oil and a threadbare rag beside the guest book. The previous guest, J.E., had scribbled only 2 words: "It follows," before an ink blot swallowed the signature. At 2:41 a.m., The grandfather clock's chime fractured the silence, even though its weights had been clipped for aesthetic only per the listing. Mac X ICU and no stranger to alarms bolted upright. A wet palm print finger splayed impossibly wide gleamed on the table's glossy surface. Rising tension surged when each attempt to wipe it away smeared darkened streaks that smelled faintly metallic like old blood before recoalescing into a sharper outline. Remembering Adirondack lore of a bootlegger dubbed Wet Hand Walt, drowned by prohibition agents under Bartlett Carey Bridge, Mac searched his phone. Locals swore Walt left drenching prints on tavern bars where he'd once collected debts. Clues deepened as Mac noticed the Opera House glass panels now misted from within, revealing silhouettes in 1920s evening wear frozen mid-applause. He doused the candle. The silhouettes clapped soundless yet shaking dust from ceiling beams. Climax, a gurgling voice seeped from the table. Another round barkeep and the wet hand rose three-dimensionally, wrist-dripping lakeweed reaching for Mac's throat. He hurled the lemon oil tin. It passed through the limb, but the metallic scent grew suffocating. Outcome survival by surrender, Mac sprinted outside, sleeping in his Jeep Wrangler till dawn, engine running, radio low with old jazz that seemed to placate the unseen patron. On checkout, he left the rag soaked in pure bleach across the table, hoping to erase whatever sought service. Twist stinger weeks later, his Airbnb review notifications pinged. A new host response had appeared beneath his stay, thanking Wet Hand Walt for keeping the bar lively and attaching a photo, the dining room table set for two across from a seat labeled Mac, a fresh palm print slick and waiting. Story 3. The Big Bear Lake Lantern. Snow muffled everything along rim of the World Highway when newly divorced English teacher Erin Holt steered her Subaru through a flurry that felt personal, bound for a cedar-sided Airbnb called the Signalman's Rest on Big Bear Lake's North Shore. She needed 2 quiet nights to finish grading senior essays and perhaps convince herself the world still held order. The host's lone instruction taped to an antique brass lantern hanging by the hearth read, "Keep it lit at 10:07, the tracks remember." Erin shrugged, chalking it up to mountain quirk, signed the Guestbook at 9:53 p.m. and struck a match. Inciting ripple the moment kerosene hissed alive, the cabin's old rotary wall phone rang, though the line had been disconnected since the 80s. On the other end, only the distant clatter of iron wheels on rail. She wrote it off as cross-wiring until 2:07 a.m., when a mournful whistle drifted over frozen lake water, where no tracks had run since the 1911 logging spur collapsed into the canyon. Tension thickened. The temperature plummeted, her breath hanging like exhaust as invisible boots crunched across the wraparound porch boards, groaning toward the door. Erin recalled a local folklore pamphlet she'd skimmed in town. A brakeman nicknamed Redcap Riley died, waving a lantern warning of the spur's washout, his body never found beneath the ice. The pamphlet promised Redcap still patrolled any light he deemed his. A gust killed the lantern. Instant darkness swallowed the cabin save for glow off the lake, where Erin saw a phantom locomotive reflected in the panes, sparks showering its wheels. Climax struck when the rotary phone shrieked again, the earpiece vibrating off the hook. A voice wet with static pleaded, "Signal clear." And then the porch board splintered inward as icy fingerprints spread across the window glass, tracing rail spikes. Adrenaline roaring, Aaron upended the kerosene can into the fireplace. Flames whooshed up the flue tongues of heat, licking the lantern's wick, reigniting it. The fingerprints melted, the phantom train's reflection faded, and the porch fell silent. Outcome: Aaron spent dawn in her car heater, maxed essays, forgotten departing before sunrise, painted the snow pink. Twist stinger: 3 days later in Bakersfield, a gray parcel awaited on her stoop. Inside lay a rust-flecked Southern Pacific conductor's badge stamped Riley, and beneath it a Guestbook page, hers, rewritten in what looked like smeared rail grease to add a single note: lantern tended. Return next winter. Story 4. The Shenandoah Rocking Chair. If you press your ear to the silent Blue Ridge at midnight, locals say you can still hear field hospital hymns rising with the summer gnats. Journalist Rob Ridge Runner Alden didn't believe in echoes of war. He booked Nelson Gap Cabin outside Luray to finish a National Geographic freelance piece on Appalachian cave ecology and to prove to his editor he could meet a deadline sober. The host's lone admonition was carved into a walnut plaque above a Civil War-era rocking chair: never let it stop before dawn. Rob, amused, noted the detail in the Guestbook at 10:14 p.m., then pushed the chair into a lazy creak-and-groan rhythm, setting his laptop timer to 5:59 a.m., inciting spasm at 1:03 a.m. An astringent hospital odor, iodine and charred bandages flooded the one-room cabin, and Rob's Bluetooth speaker crackled with a scratchy harmonium, though Spotify was offline. Rising tension escalated when the rocking slowed despite invisible hands. Each squeak shorter, heavier, as if weighted by casualties climbing aboard. Remembering a battlefield tour years ago, Rob Googled an offline wiki cache. Dr. Gideon Avery, nicknamed the Bonesaw Barber, amputated 100+ soldiers in a makeshift infirmary near Nelson Gap until guerrillas executed him for refusing Confederate wounded. Legend claims Avery's spirit rocks through triage lists nightly, desperate to keep at least one heart beating till sunrise. Clues compounded as Rob's laptop screen flickered to show not his article, but a ledger auto-typing names, each highlighted amputation complete. His own name cued next, cursor blinking like a flat line. Climax erupted when the chair froze mid-rock, wood fibers shrieking, and a cold clamp grasped Rob's calf below the knee. Phantom steel teeth bit bone, sawing rhythmically with every heartbeat. He howled, kicking free, and in blind panic hurled his stainless Nalgene bottle at the chair, restarting its momentum with a hollow thunk. Outcome: the pressure vanished, the odor retreating as dawn's first pink licked ridgetops. Rob hobbled to his Subaru calf, uncut yet bruised in the exact diameter of a bone saw blade. Twist our stinger 2 weeks later, his Nat Geo draft auto-updated in the cloud. Buried in footnotes was a fresh citation: Alden R. Case Study Self-Amputation Avoidance 2025, followed by a scanned Guestbook page showing Dr. Avery's florid signature beneath Rob's closing with the penciled promise: rock again soon, next time above the knee. Story 5. The Tillamook Timber Echo storm clouds bottled Highway 6 in moonless ink when wildfire survivor twins Jack and Jory Campbell nosedived their dented Tacoma toward an isolated treehouse Airbnb straddling the Wilson River Canyon outside Tillamook, Oregon. They'd fled Portland smoke memories to celebrate turning 35 with craft cheese tours and moss-draped hikes, doctor's orders for PTSD recovery. A laminated card pinned to the rope bridge gate offered one jarring rule: strike the dinner bell on the deck every hour. Loggers hate silence. Laughing it off, the siblings scrawled their names in the cedar-planked guest book at 8:59 p.m. Hook snagged when Jack's first bell clang ricocheted like gunfire through the Sitka spruce, answered by a distant metallic ring 2 beats slower, as if someone deeper in the gorge mimicked him with rusted steel. The A-frame treehouse, thigh-deep in wind-shivered Douglas fir, still smelled of fresh sap and linseed, yet an undernote of wet ash lingered. At 11:00 p.m., the power flickered. Their trauma therapy white noise app stuttered into vintage radio static layered with men shouting. Timber settings slid into dread as cold drafts exhaled resin-scented smoke. Though the wood burner lay unlit, inciting incident cracked open when Jory's phone captured a live stream push alert from a user named Hot Saw Henry, showing a grainy POV rushing uphill toward the very treehouse chainsaw idling, timestamp syncing perfectly with now. Rising tension thickened each new bell strike, returned a closer echo, and bark chips began peppering the deck like sleet. Although no wind stirred the trunks, remembering a Tillamook Forest Center plaque about the 1933 Tillamook burn. Jack Googled offline. Cache legend claims 4 fireline loggers who refused evacuation still roam, deafened by roar of flame, enraged when nightly silence recalls their last unheard warnings. Revealed clue: the guestbook's earliest page bore 4 embossed initials, HSBD CFJR, matching the dead men's payroll stamps with fresh sap sealing the ink. Midnight climax erupted. The dinner bell yanked itself, clanging manic Morse. Below, glowing saw-teeth carved phantom curves into supporting Douglas fir roots, sending tremors up the stilts. Jack hurled his aluminum water bottle, metal meeting metal, momentarily stunning the apparitions. Grabbing Jory, he clipped them onto the rope bridge and ziplined to the Tacoma as spectral sawdust hissed around them. Outcome, they fishtailed onto the highway, engine choking smoke, though no fire burned.